Chapter 53-34. The Tang family had once humiliated and looked down on him. In the future, he would make the Tang family regret it. Mu Shanji was lucky. 3 months later, he came to the capital in rags. In order to hide his identity, he became a beggar and begged all the way. He even imagined that when he regained his identity and inherited the throne, he might become the first beggar emperor. At that time, many scholars would write about him. Of course, he couldn't enter the palace, but he remembered that imperial concubine Xia's mother's family was the Xia family in the capital. It was very easy to get information among the beggars. Soon, he found out where the Xia family was, and Mu Shanji went to look for them. It was very difficult for a beggar to enter the Xia family. The first 2 times, not only did he not get in, but he was also mocked. He was so angry that his whole body trembled. In the end, he was hit by a few rotten steamed buns. He understood that there were many people who looked down on him. Since he couldn't go in, he could only find another way. He used the money he got to buy clothes to make himself cleaner. In the end, he went in as a servant. Because he was literate and good-looking, he was easily chosen. However, Mu Shanji's heart was sullen. He was a prince after all. But he had been reduced to such a state by these snobbish people. When he regained his identity, he would definitely teach these people a lesson. The system told Tang Guo about Mu Shanji's situation. She was a little surprised. She didn't expect Mu Shanji to really come to the capital and sneak into the Xie family. However, he escaped in a hurry and didn't have any tokens on him. It wouldn't be easy to prove his identity. Even if he sneaked into the Xie family, without Mother Mu and other tokens, who would believe him? At this time, Mu Shanji was also worried about this. Without any evidence, he really didn't dare to say that he was imperial concubine Xia's son. If these people thought he was crazy and chased him out, then he wouldn't be able to go in again. Therefore, he could only stay in the Xia family temporarily and do some chores. He was very unhappy. Why don't we help him? I'll write a letter to Elder Bai and ask him to secretly send a message to the Empress. Mu Shanji has already sneaked into the Xia family. Now that it's under her nose, I wonder how she'll make use of it. She was not helping the Empress. She was just making the 2 sides fight in advance. Ever since Master Bai said that he had found a treasure boy, she knew that the children of the Empress and imperial concubine Xia had no chance to inherit the throne. How could the Emperor miss out on someone who had been taught by old Bai? Not long after, the Empress found out that Mu Shanji was actually in the Xia family. She was both happy and surprised. She was happy that she had finally found this little bastard. She was shocked that she hadn't received any news from him, even though he was right under her nose. Fortunately, Mu Shanji couldn't prove his identity for the time being, so she could do a lot of things. Tang Guo only asked Master Bai to secretly reveal the news about Mu Shanji to the Empress. She didn't pay much attention to what happened after that. No matter how lucky Mu Shanji was, it was impossible for him to turn misfortune into blessing every time, right? Moreover, Master Bai was keeping an eye on him, so there shouldn't be any major issues. She was very busy now. Every day, she had to admire Xie Rong's talents. Xie Rong had come up with a plan when he played the guqin last time. He would show off his talent to Tang Guo at the right time. Vertex. Chapter 53-35. Sometimes he would play the zither, sometimes he would practice swordsmanship, and sometimes he would draw. Of course, Tang Guo would cooperate. She would play the zither, practice swordsmanship, and draw beautiful paintings. Xie Rong began to draw her in all kinds of ways. He found that Tang Guo had taken the initiative to play with him. She was very happy. Every day, he would leave everything to his subordinates and leave his time to Tang Guo to play with her. Xie Rong was so obvious. If Minister Tang still did not know what he meant, he would be really stupid. Old Madame Xia could also tell that she had always liked Tang Guo. Ever since the curse of the blood doll, she had seen through everything. Since her grandson was happy, she had nothing to say. Tang Guo was a little different from ordinary people. She was actually very obedient. There was nothing wrong with her. Old Madame Xia was easy to deal with, but Minister Tang was not. Don't even think about it. We really can't climb up the social ladder. Minister Tang rejected him very seriously. Young Master Xia, you should give up. Although you are a good person, You are not a good match for my daughter. Your family background is good, and you are unparalleled in intelligence. Now that you are not sick, you can say that your future is bright. Why do you want to disturb Guer's life? In short, if he chose him, his daughter's future would not be guaranteed. Mu Shanji was a poor boy. He had repeatedly helped him, but in the end, he still betrayed him. Xie Rong was a person who would be above the clouds sooner or later. He did not dare to entrust his daughter to him. Minister Tang, don't be too anxious. We can take our time. Anyway, our families live close to each other. Time will prove my sincerity to Guer. Minister Tang almost rolled his eyes. Sincerity? Maybe he was just curious. Previously, he thought that this kid was a good person. Now he finally understood that he did not have a good eye for people. No matter how long it takes, it won't be possible. Xie Rong did not say anything more. He knew it would be like this. The psychological trauma that Mu Shanji had caused to Minister Tang could not be eliminated in a short time. Then can I play with Guer? Xie Rong took 2 steps back. Don't worry, we will play together under the care of the servants. Without your permission, I will not do anything else. Minister Tang was very conflicted about this matter. If he didn't allow it, Guer liked to play with him. Suddenly his eyes moved, and he said with a smile, "Of course you can play, just like before. But if you want to marry my Guer, that's impossible." Xie Rong didn't say anything. If that was the case, he could only play with Guer and couldn't send off the official as a son-in-law. Minister Tang didn't know what Xie Rong was thinking. If he knew, he would definitely say that he could live for another 100 years. Tang Guo knew that the two of them had reached a consensus. As usual, Xie Rong played with her. But recently, she often saw Squire Tang sighing alone. He must be worried about her future. Right now he was still alive. After he passed away, who would take care of his only daughter? Jian was not bad. Unfortunately, Jian was also a girl. There were many things that she could not take care of herself. Every man in the family was always easy to bully. Seeing Squire Tang sighing insomnia again and again, Tang Guo knew that it was time to get back to normal. The person who could create this miracle and not arouse suspicion was, of course, Elder Bai. The next day, Tang Guo listened to Xie Rong play the zither and handed him a cup of hot tea. Chapter 53-36. Xie Rong drank the tea with a smile, but he didn't know that there was something in the tea. She hadn't used this for a long time. It was a dream in a dream. After drinking the tea, Xie Rong fell asleep in a short time. In the dream, he saw that he and Tang Guo were married. Their life was happy. More importantly, she had returned to normal. Xie Rong was a little anxious. If Tang Guo returned to normal, their wedding day would be brought forward. Therefore, he tried his best to find out how Tang Guo returned to normal. At the end of the dream, he saw an old man in white clothes with white hair. Although he could only see his back, he still remembered that the old man was Senior Bai, who had treated him before. But he couldn't find that island anymore. Just when he was anxious and confused, a voice sounded in his ear. "State Preceptor, the Emperor wants to see you." Xie Rong woke up immediately. He remembered everything in the dream clearly, especially the State Preceptor at the end. Nightmare. Xie Rong came back to his senses and saw that Tang Guo was staring at him. He found that he was sweating all over. He wiped it gently. "It's not a nightmare. It's a beautiful dream." Seeing that Tang Guo was confused, Xie Rong repeated, "It's a very beautiful dream." State Preceptor? Was he calling Senior Bai? Xie Rong's eyes were bright. He coaxed Tang Guo for a while and hurried to find Minister Tang. Minister Tang didn't want to see Xie Rong, but he still met him in the end. "Tell me, what's the matter? You can't marry my daughter. If you want to give up, you can still do it." "Minister, you know that I've seen a miracle, right? Doesn't everyone know that?" "Minister Tang, Senior Bai is a master. If you invite him to treat Guer and let her return to normal, will I have a better chance of marrying her?" Xie Rong asked nervously. He didn't want to work in vain. In the end, he couldn't marry her. He had to ask clearly. This father-in-law was very difficult to communicate with. "If Guer can be cured and she's willing, I have nothing to say," Minister Tang said indifferently. He didn't believe that Guer could be cured at all. How could his daughter recover so quickly? Was he still afraid of being bullied? Then it's settled. If I can invite Elder Bai to cure Gua will be willing to marry me. Father-in-law, you can't stop me. Squire Tang rolled his eyes and said, Get lost, don't call me that. We haven't even met yet. If you can help Gua recover, I'll be convinced. If she's willing, I won't stop her. If she's not willing, you can get lost. After some time, I plan to make a trip to the capital. Xia Rong said seriously. I'll have to trouble Minister Gua. You're so annoying. You don't even know how to take care of my daughter. Yet you want me to take care of her? It's as if I'm taking care of him for you. Squire Tang was very unhappy. He would feel unhappy if he didn't scold Xia Rong. Xia Rong forced a smile. Elder Bai should be the state preceptor now. I'll ask him to treat Gua. Squire Tang's expression turned serious. Are you really going? Of course it's true. If he did not let Gua recover, he might not be able to send off the official as a son-in-law. 3 days later, Xia Rong set off for the capital. Tang Gua had already sent a message to Elder Bai. He would cooperate and appear in Xia Rong's line of sight. System. Some people are very lucky. Host, you've arranged everything for them. Digression. This world will end tomorrow. Chapter 5337. Tangua. System, can you eat lemons too? System. I'm just a little envious. Tangua. You can go find a Tongzi. System. Let's go. A month later, Xia Rong arrived in the capital. On the first day, he began to inquire about Elder Bai's whereabouts. When he found out that the other party was indeed the state preceptor, he was relieved. Then he thought about how to meet Elder Bai and ask him to help cure Tangua. Elder Bai had received Tangua's message long ago and deliberately released the news that he was going to a certain place. Xia Rong happened to hear it and went to that place to wait. The subsequent meeting went very smoothly. Of course, Elder Bai couldn't treat her casually. Of course, he had to set some conditions. In this way, Xia Rong had to stay in the capital for some time. At least half a year he couldn't return. He is very concerned about Wuxian County, but he prefers to take this opportunity to pass Old Bai's test. He hopes that Old Bai will agree to treat Tangua. During this period of time in the capital, Xia Rong did what Master Bai asked him to do. He didn't slack off on other things, especially when it came to the Xia family. He paid attention to it all the time. He only hoped that something would happen to the Xia family. When he returned to Wuxian County, he could tell old Madame Xia. If something happened to the Xia family in the capital, old Madame Xia would definitely be happy. Not to mention old Madame Xia, he was also very happy. After all, so many people in his Xia family died because of Su Fingyun's curse. Young master, I've already asked around. That old lady surnamed Su is still half paralyzed. Imperial concubine Xia even asked the imperial physician to help treat her. But there was no way. 4 Seasons told him the news he heard. By the way, it's said that the state preceptor is a capable person. Imperial concubine Xia had previously thought of asking the emperor to treat that old lady surnamed Su. Xia Rong paused. Did the state preceptor agree? Of course not. If he agreed, she wouldn't be paralyzed anymore. 4 Seasons said with satisfaction. The state preceptor is indeed an expert. He should know that this old lady surnamed Su isn't a good person. So he didn't treat her. Even imperial concubine Xia can't do it. Although 4 Seasons was young, he had seen Su Fengyan several times. Every time she came to the Xia family to show off and say some strange things, making old Madame Xia feel uncomfortable. That's good. Xia Rong thought that Master Bai was the one who broke the curse of the Xia family. Master Bai might know about Su Fingyun's sins, so it was impossible for him to treat her. He didn't expect the Xia family to be so lucky to be protected by such a person. He hoped that time would pass quickly and Elder Bai would be able to cure Guer's illness. Then everything would be fine. Is there anything new about the Xia family in Beijing recently? What is young master asking about? There are a lot of interesting things happening in the Xia family. CG's eyes moved. This humble one has indeed heard of something recently. Didn't the Xia family recruit new servants some time ago? Not long after, someone came to the Xia family and said that the Xia family was harboring a fugitive. In the end, the Xia family found the fugitive's servant and took him away. Oh, there's such a thing. Xie Rong felt that these things were rather boring, and did not pay much attention to them. That's right, this capital Xie clan seems to be getting worse and worse. To actually be able to let a fugitive become a servant. 4 Seasons ridiculed. Meanwhile, in Wuxing County, Tang Guo also received a piece of news. Really? Chapter 5338. How could I lie to you? Of course it's true. After Mu Shanji was framed as a fugitive, he was taken away. The Xie family in the capital is in troubled times now, so they didn't pay much attention to this matter. They were also angry that the butler recruited a fugitive. So Mu Shanji was taken away just like that. He really didn't dare to reveal his identity in front of so many people. Otherwise, people would think that he was crazy. Moreover, even if he did, the Xie family most likely wouldn't believe him. He might even be executed on the spot. Yes, it's not like this hasn't happened before. Without evidence, he casually shouted out his identity as a prince. There's only one word for it, death. Other than Su Fengyin, the rest of the Xie family probably don't know about Mu Shanji's existence. I thought the Empress would arrange for someone to secretly kill or capture Mu Shanji, and use him to threaten imperial concubine Xie. I didn't expect that she would let Mu Shanji enter the palace as a little eunuch, and let him live under imperial concubine Xie's nose. This was what surprised Tang Guo. The Empress was indeed a ruthless character. No wonder she arranged for assassins, and didn't give the minister's mansion any chance of survival. If she wasn't a ruthless character, she probably wouldn't have lived until now. The reason why the Empress didn't have a son was because of imperial concubine Xie. Imperial concubine Xie was later drugged by her, and couldn't have children. However, she still had a son. The Empress has always hated this matter. Knowing that imperial concubine Xie had such a big son, how could she let him go? Compared to killing him, this is more painful for imperial concubine Xie. Now Mu Shanji has been assigned to the Empress's side. He was almost taught a lesson a while ago, and didn't dare to resist at all. He probably still wants revenge in his heart. So he's living an ignoble life. The Empress treats Mu Shanji every day. She's very happy. She even brought Mu Shanji to imperial concubine Xie. Tang Guo couldn't help but click her tongue. How's her illness? Old Bai is just helping her stall. He won't die for the time being. As long as the Empress says the word, she's completely hopeless. Besides, Mu Shanji, who had become a eunuch by the Empress's side, finally had a chance to catch his breath. He never thought that he would have such a miserable encounter. If he had known this would happen, he would have shouted and revealed his identity when he was taken away by the Xie family. However, it was even more useless to shout now. There was no token to prove his identity, unless he could meet imperial consort Xie and tell her the identity and characteristics of Mother Mu. Otherwise, if he were to reveal his identity elsewhere, he would only be met with death. For a prince to become a eunuch due to a freak combination of factors, even if the emperor knew about it, he would probably cover it up and not let the truth come out. The royal family couldn't afford to lose face like this. Mu Shanji did not know who had framed him. The Empress's people had fabricated a very realistic process for him, making him feel that he had been dragged here to take the blame. In any case, he had already made a mental note of all those who had bullied him. When the day came, he would definitely consign these people to eternal damnation. Recently, he had been looking for an opportunity to get close to imperial consort Xie. As long as he saw her alone, he would be able to reveal her identity. He didn't know that the Empress's people had been monitoring him, and didn't stop him from getting close to imperial concubine Xie. She had already prepared what kind of gift she would give to the mother and son. Chapter 5339. Mu Shanji finally found an opportunity to meet imperial concubine Xie alone. On this day, imperial concubine Xie was watching the fish in the pond in the pavilion. The person beside her happened to be standing far away, so he quietly sneaked over. The moment he saw imperial concubine Xie, he was so excited that he almost called out for his mother. Imperial concubine Xie was startled when such a big person suddenly jumped out. Before she could scream, she fell into the pond. Imperial concubine Xie, who fell into the water, screamed for help. The people around her quickly came over, and jumped over Mu Shanji to save her. Mu Shanji was stunned for a moment. Because of this, he forgot to save her and was caught. When Imperial concubine Xia was rescued, he was tied up. Mu Shanji was not afraid at that time. He thought that he could wait until Imperial concubine Xia saw him, and then tell her his identity. But he didn't know that Imperial concubine Xia didn't want to see him at all. She directly ordered the head palace maid beside her to drag him out and give him 50 beatings. When the beatings were enough, he would be sent back to the Empress like a corpse. This person is not sensible this time. Imperial concubine Xia only gave him 50 beatings and didn't take his life directly because of the Empress. Imperial concubine Xia said that although the Empress is sick, she can't neglect the people below. It's fine if he offended her today, but if he offended the Emperor, it's not something that can be solved with 50 beatings. The head palace maid said this, and then secretly observed the Empress's expression. But she didn't see anything. The Empress had always been like this. She didn't show anything, so people couldn't see anything. Then I thank Imperial concubine Xia for her kindness. Little Muzi is new, and doesn't know the rules of the palace. He will be more familiar with it in the future. The Empress looked at Mu Shanji, who was like a dead dog, and covered the corner of her mouth with a silk handkerchief. In fact, she was covering the corner of her mouth. Take little Muzi away and punish him. Don't run around in the future. Imperial concubine Xia is magnanimous today, so she spared your life. Mu Shanji was half dead. When he heard this in a daze, he almost vomited blood. How could his mother be such a person? She didn't ask anything and just beat him up. He was a little glad that the Empress didn't blame him. Otherwise, he might have died today. Speaking of which, this Empress's personality was quite good. When the Empress saw Mu Shanji giving her a grateful look, she laughed crazily in her heart. Imperial concubine Xia would never have thought that Mu Shanji would give her a grateful look after she had caused his son to become like this. There was no rush. Take your time. Imperial consort Xia had caused her to be unable to have an heir. She would let her experience the feeling of not having an heir even if she had one. Tangguo was writing to Master Bai again. Recently, she had been watching the things in the palace every day, as if she was watching a palace drama. The days without Xia Rong were indeed a little boring. There was nothing fun to do. He couldn't listen to the music or watch the sword dance. The general meaning of the letter was that after the Empress defeated Imperial concubine Xia, Elder Bai would indirectly let the Emperor know the evidence of the Empress doing bad things. Then, the Empress would be able to receive a boxed meal. After placing the letter into the puppet carrier pigeon, she began to count the days, wondering when Xia Rong would return. The system watched silently from the side. Just a second ago, she had schemed against someone to death, and the next second, she was thinking about her sweet love. His host was really a busy person. Chapter 5340. In the 3 months he had been in the palace, Mu Shanji had lived a torturous life. He had wanted to find Imperial concubine Xia, hoping to explain his identity. However, every time he was close, Imperial concubine Xia would have all kinds of accidents. And he couldn't avoid being punished. Every time his old injuries healed, new ones would be added. After 3 or 4 times, Mu Shanji couldn't vent the anger in his heart. He even resented Imperial concubine Xia. He was her biological son, but she actually tortured him to death. If the Empress hadn't been merciful enough to find the Imperial doctor to prescribe medicine, he might have died long ago. The Empress was very happy. If it wasn't for the lack of time, she would definitely torture the mother and son for the rest of their lives, and make them enemies. The Empress decided to do something big again. She wanted Mu Shanji to hate Imperial concubine Xia completely. She also wanted Imperial concubine Xia to regret it when she knew the truth. She guessed that there should be a token that Mu Shanji was a prince in Wuxian County, Mu Shanji's hometown. Unfortunately, her people searched the thatched hut, but couldn't find the token. It seemed that she still had to let Mu Shanji find it himself. This time she wouldn't stop him. This time, she used her illness as an excuse to ask Mu Shanji to take others to Wuxian County to help her find a medicine. She heard that only the medicine in Wuxian County had an effect on her illness. Little Mu, go with everyone this time. You must find the medicine for me. The Empress looked at Mushanji and said, I heard that you used to be from Wuxian County. You should be familiar with that place, right? Mushanji quickly replied, yes. He didn't expect that those killers were arranged by the Empress. After getting along with her for so many days, he felt that the Empress was quite good. Her nominal child was the crown prince. It was a sure thing that he would inherit the throne. Why would she do something unnecessary? How would he know the grudge between the Empress and imperial concubine Xia? Returning to Wuxian County this time was an opportunity for Mu Shanji. He didn't know if those people had found the token hidden by his mother. They probably hadn't found it. After all, the token wasn't hidden at home. He didn't expect the Empress to give him such a chance. When he got the token, there shouldn't be a problem when he went to see his mother, right? The next day, Mu Shanji rushed out of the capital with his men. At this time, Xie Rong also planned to go back to Wuxian County. 3 days ago, Master Bai gave him a bottle of medicine, saying that after drinking it, it could cure Tang Guo's stupidity. Now that he was rushing back, he didn't expect to meet Mu Shanji. Of course, it was just a glance. He was sitting in a carriage, while Mu Shanji was riding a horse. Mu Shanji did not see him. He noticed that Mu Shanji's appearance had changed a lot. He didn't notice anything strange about it, but when he heard someone call Mu Shanji eunuch Mu, he almost spat out his saliva. He couldn't figure out the reason. He was afraid that Mu Shanji would cause trouble when he returned, so he abandoned the carriage and rode back to Wuxian County from the inn. When he met Minister Tang, he told him about how Mu Shanji had become eunuch Mu. At that time, Tang Jian was also at the side. She raised her head in surprise. Squire Tang opened his mouth wide and didn't know what to say. What they were worried about did not happen at all. Mu Shanji took the medicine that the Empress said, and found the things that Mother Mu had hidden. He did not stay and left. He did not care about the family Tang at all. Chapter 5341. You didn't manage to invite Mr. Bai? Squire Tang asked with some disappointment. It seemed that he had too much hope. This matter was simply impossible. Xia Rong smiled mysteriously and took out a bottle of medicine. Bai Lai is the state preceptor. Of course, it's not easy to invite him. He gave me a bottle of medicine. He said that Gua can recover after drinking it. Squire Tang was excited. He was looking forward to it. But he was also worried that there was something wrong with the medicine. Xia Rong took a sip in front of him. He said that the medicine had no side effects. It was useless for ordinary people. But for someone like Tang Gua, who was a little silly, it would be useful after drinking it. Squire Tang was moved. Then, Tang Gua drank the medicine, as if it was plain water. In fact, it was very ordinary water. There were only some herbs in it. After Tang Gua drank it, the two stared at her, waiting for the magical effect. Tang Gua looked at them and blinked her eyes. Then she completed her act and decided to try fainting. The two were scared when she fainted. Fortunately, the doctor said that she was just sleeping, so they were not worried. Tang Gua woke up in the evening. When she saw Squire Tang, he looked at her expectantly. She called father. This time, it was different from before. Squire Tang was in tears. He quickly went forward and asked with tears in his eyes, Gua are you okay? Do you still remember me? Do you still remember the past? Father, I remember. Hearing such a clear conversation, Squire Tang almost broke down and burst into tears. He wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes. Gua do you still remember me? Xie Rong didn't want to be left behind, so he followed up and asked. Squire Tang couldn't help but roll his eyes. Although he didn't object, this guy was too anxious. Who are you? Tang Gua pretended to be curious and asked. Xie Rong's smile disappeared instantly. Squire Tang slapped his thigh. His daughter didn't recognize this guy. Ha ha ha. He wanted to laugh. Xie Rong sighed. My name is Xie Rong. It's okay if you don't remember me. Remember it again today. I hope you won't forget it in the future. Minister Tang pitied Xie Rong again, but Gua was his daughter. He had no choice but to stand on his daughter's side. Xie Rong, will you still play the zither for me in the future? Do you still want to show me your sword dance? Will you still paint for me? If you can do all these, I will remember you. Hearing this, Xie Rong was pleasantly surprised and hurriedly replied, Of course I can. It turned out that she hadn't forgotten. Squire Tang. I'm a little happy, but also a little unhappy. System. I'm a little happy, but also a little unhappy. The energy was increasing rapidly, but that guy had attracted a lot of the host's attention. 3 months later, Tang Gua and Xie Rong got married. A month after the wedding, some things that happened in the capital gradually spread to Wuxian County. Because she hadn't been paying attention to those things recently, the system didn't want to spoil her mood. Tang Gua didn't know that so many things had happened in Beijing in just a few months. The empress plotted against imperial concubine Xia, poisoned her, and framed Mu Shanji. This time, imperial concubine Xia did not plan to let this little eunuch go. It even alarmed the emperor. The emperor ordered Mu Shanji to be beaten to death on the spot. At the critical moment, Mu Shanji shouted that he was a prince and took out the token that he always carried with him. He originally wanted to meet imperial concubine Xia alone, but he didn't have the chance in the past few months. The main reason was that imperial concubine Xia was very cautious. Chapter 53-42. He was just a eunuch. He couldn't get close at all. Mu Shanji's words shocked everyone present, especially imperial concubine Xia. When she saw the token, she almost fainted. The empress also pretended to be shocked. Except for imperial concubine Xia. Everyone thought she didn't know. Imperial concubine Xia woke up and looked at the empress with hatred. Mu Shanji didn't die, but he wasn't restored as a prince, because his existence was a disgrace to the royal family. Even if he lived in a big house in the capital, had endless money, and had countless servants to serve him, he still hated the empress. He hated imperial concubine Xia, the Xia family, and the emperor. However, he couldn't touch these people he hated. Imperial concubine Xia cried every day. She hated the empress very much. She told Mu Shanji that the empress must have planned all of this. After Mu Shanji heard it, he also felt that it was very possible. He wasn't stupid enough to think that the empress was really as kind as she looked. Now that he thought about it, many things were full of countless coincidences. The empress clearly wanted to play him to death. Now he didn't have any chance to inherit the throne. He was extremely resentful. Without evidence, he couldn't do anything to the empress. Mu Shanji thought of the Xia family and imperial concubine Xia. Why didn't they overturn the emperor's notice and make the Xia family their own king? Imperial concubine Xia was also moved. The empress had hurt her son so badly, but there was no evidence. She didn't believe that the emperor didn't have any speculation. He clearly didn't want to pursue this matter. He thought that her son was useless and humiliating. In that case, she might as well go all the way and rebel. However, as soon as things started, the Xia family's rebellion was stopped by the emperor. Imperial concubine Xia was banished to the cold palace, and the Xia family's property was confiscated. Mu Shanji was also imprisoned in a very remote house in the capital. His life wasn't as good as before. The emperor didn't have any feelings for this son at all. Moreover, the other party wanted his life. It was already a blessing to let him live. All the crimes of the Xia family were exposed, and all the treasures they collected were all taken away. Those who should be killed were killed, and those who should be exiled were exiled. Su Fengyan was paralyzed on the bed. She could only watch helplessly as her clan was destroyed. She struggled to get up, but she flipped over. This time, her other side was also paralyzed. Now that everyone was in danger, no one cared about her. Su Fengyan starved to death in her room. Before she died, she remembered the state of the person who helped her change her fate. She heard that he was covered in abscesses. Could this really be retribution? After the Xia family was finished, the empress thought that she had won. Who would have thought that the emperor would throw her a pile of evidence one day? And she lost all her energy. Later on, the empress died of illness and her maternal family declined. The crown prince did not meet the emperor's requirements and was eventually crowned as king. Another crown prince was appointed, who was the imperial preceptor's personal disciple. I didn't expect so many things to happen in such a short time. After reading so much news, Xie Rong said in surprise, Elder Bai has also returned to that mysterious island. Even the emperor can't keep such an expert. The system snickered. Elder Bai, that fellow, had already gotten enough, and felt that he could return to the island to enjoy life. How could being in the palace compare to being on the island? Tanggua also checked on Elder Bai's situation through the system. He was basking in the sun in the vegetable garden. His life was very comfortable. Tang Jian saw that Tanggua and Xia Rong were very loving. Xia Rong treated her very well, so she was finally relieved. She developed her business in peace and became a rich woman. She also fulfilled her previous vow to remain unmarried. One thing worth mentioning was that when Tang Jian went to the capital, she received a small note. Looking at the familiar handwriting, she couldn't help but recall the past. She looked at the people coming and going and felt very lucky. Everything she saw now was different from the dream. The people around her were living very well. She glanced at the content of the note, smiled faintly, and then burned the note. Mu Shanji didn't give up and wanted to pull her into his group. He even made up a beautiful dream for her to be an empress. He had never been sober. In the palace, the emperor heard the secret guard's report and smiled. He's a smart person. Chapter 53-43. Tanggua, you're already a sophomore. Why are you still using lipstick that's less than 100 yuan? You'll end up in your stomach. You should use something more expensive. A lipstick costs at most 200 or 300 yuan. Why should you save that little? When Tanggua regained consciousness, she heard such a harsh voice. She looked in front of her and saw a mirror. The person in the mirror should be her. Speaking of which, most of the time, her appearance really didn't disappoint her. Her face was also very good-looking. However, she was only a sophomore and not yet 20 years old. Therefore, there wasn't much makeup on her face. It looked like she simply applied a thin layer of foundation, followed by a series of necessary steps such as eyebrows, blush, lipstick, and so on. She realized that this makeup looked a little formal. It didn't look like the kind of makeup that she usually put on for fun. Thinking that her current identity was a university student, she thought that this makeup might be a part-time job. The appearance of this body was very good. Most of it was done in the style of etiquette. I agree with what Tao Jejia said. Lipstick is different from other things. It's better to use something more expensive. Tanggua followed the voice and looked in the direction of the girl who spoke. It was a beautiful girl. Although the other party was wearing no makeup, it still couldn't hide the brilliance on her body. This was a very good-looking girl. Yin Yin, don't you think so? Bai Tian's gaze turned to the other side. There was a girl sitting there playing on the computer. She was probably the tallest in this dormitory. She looked back at Tanggua and replied, "Sometimes it's better not to apply low-quality lipstick. It doesn't look good. The color isn't right. It gives people a feeling that it's very cheap." After this person called Yin Yin finished speaking, the entire dormitory fell silent. It was as if they were waiting for something. However, after a minute, the dormitory was still very quiet. The three people raised their heads in surprise and looked in Tanggua's direction. Tanggua stared at herself in the mirror and was carefully observing the lipstick on her lips. The original owner's makeup skills were actually quite good. From everything on the table, it could be seen that the cosmetics she used were indeed very cheap. Many things cost dozens of yuan each. In the eyes of many people, they were indeed not considered cosmetics. But with her good makeup skills and the original owner's natural beauty, it was hard to tell how cheap the makeup on her face was. As for the color of the lipstick, she felt that it was not bad. She had just noticed that her three roommates usually spent a lot of money. Perhaps their family background was very good, so they felt that a few dozen yuan worth of lipstick was very cheap. In fact, someone had done a survey and found that the highest-selling lipstick on the internet was actually less than 50 yuan. After applying the lipstick and walking out, not many people could really tell how much the lipstick cost. Speaking of which, everyone had a different view of spending. There was really no need to be so cheap when it came to lipstick. A lipstick that cost a few hundred yuan was good, but it might not be suitable for those who were poor and thrifty. The original owner went to work part-time, and the things he used were very cheap, which meant that he wasn't rich. It wasn't that she didn't know that expensive makeup was good, but each one cost a few hundred. With so much variety, it would add up to a few thousand. She couldn't afford it at all. Chapter 5344. Because she didn't have any memories, Tangwa didn't respond to her 3 roommates. Instead, she was seriously touching up her makeup. She would go to the toilet later and look at the memories of this world. When she stood up, she found that her 3 roommates were looking at her strangely. She paused for a moment before going to the toilet. What's wrong with her today? Tao Jejia was a little puzzled. She looks weird. I've told her several times before not to always use those cheap things. It's really degrading. It's simply lowering the standards of our dormitory. She always retorts. What she found strange was why Tangwa didn't blush and didn't show a very timid, embarrassed look that was about to cry. The other party's gentle glance just now was full of confidence. This made Tao Jejia a little angry. She was almost stunned by such cheap things on Tangwa's face. Maybe she's in a hurry, Tao Jejia said to herself. She works part-time every week and only earns 200 to 300 yuan a week. It's enough to buy lipstick. It feels like a waste of time. Buy Tian. Maybe it's more meaningful to her. 200 to 300 yuan is indeed a little. It's not worth it. She has to stand for so long. It's simply cheap labor. Tangwa didn't pay attention to her roommate's conversation in the dormitory. She had already closed her eyes and was receiving the memories of this world. She was 19 years old this year and had just entered her 2nd year of university. It was indeed as she had guessed. Today was Friday. Coincidentally, there were no classes in the afternoon, and she was going to work part-time. Her family was very poor. Her parents couldn't give her more resources. Her tuition fees were paid on loan. Her living expenses depended on her working part-time every week. Just as Tao Jejia said, she could only earn 200 to 300 yuan a week at most. However, to her it was good enough. At least she had living expenses. She also wanted to buy better makeup, but if she did that, she wouldn't have money to eat. Going to university was her dream. After she went to university, her dream was to find a good job in the future with a generous salary. She could bring a different kind of change to her and her family. In fact, being born in such a poor family, she had some inferiority complex in her bones. However, she also had some pride. If she didn't have that bit of pride in her bones, and was willing to pay a price for money, she might not be using lipstick that was worth dozens of yuan now. She didn't want to use that kind of method to get money. She hoped that her money would come from the right, and she could spend it comfortably. Behind her back, many people looked down on her and thought that she was poor. In fact, her roommates in the dormitory had a better attitude. She had experienced even worse scenarios. Some of the boys in the school failed to woo her, and in the end, they were verbally abused and mocked by the other party. She kept her spine straight and used these external obstacles as motivation. She thought that since she had come this far, in a few more years, her life would definitely change. These so-called alumni and classmates, on the day of graduation, they might never meet again. However, she underestimated the viciousness of human nature. She didn't know if someone couldn't stand her living so cleanly, or if they saw that she was especially easy to bully and wanted to bully her. So they arranged a game for her. This was originally a game for fun, but it made her life stop at the age of 19. It happened next month. The class would organize an activity, and the expenses would be paid by a few classmates with good family backgrounds. Everyone in the class would book a cruise ship to go out and play. Wasn't transmigration games popular recently? There was also the Truman World. Some people wanted to create a real-life version of the Truman World. Chapter 5345. They planned to put the person who didn't know the truth on the island and set up some scenes on the island to make her feel like she had transmigrated to another era. The camera would be placed in a dark place, and they would all watch from behind to see how this person would react. They played this game purely because they were bored and wanted to find something fun. They also planned to wait for the game to be exposed, or when this person broke down, they would take the initiative to end the game. Wasn't the host very poor? If she wanted to make a scene, they would compensate her with some money. She should be happy. After all, she looked like she was really short of money. This was already part of the plan. There were 2 lucky people in the class. One was Tangwa, because she was the poorest person in the class. Other than going to class, She had to work part-time to earn money. Many people didn't like her and wanted to see her make a fool of herself, especially those who failed to pursue her. They wanted to see her cry and be afraid. The other person was also an unsociable person in the class. He didn't talk all day and was like a mute. Other than going to class, he usually stayed in the library and didn't make friends. Many students wanted to see how this bookworm would react when he found out that he had transmigrated and changed the environment. The game started with the whole class sitting on the cruise ship. The food of the host and bookworm Enchanting was drugged. When they were in a daze, the people around them would make it seem like the cruise ship had hit a reef. There was a possibility that they would fall silent. Before they could react, they would pass out. When they woke up again, they were on the island that the group of students prepared for them. This island was decorated to look like an ancient abandoned village that was haunted at night. It was very old and scary. The host and bookworm didn't know that this was a trap. They thought that they had transmigrated and started to work together to survive here. After the host panicked at first, she gradually calmed down and decided to make a raft with bookworm. When the time came, they would see if they could go out and see what the outside world was like. Bookworm Enchanting still didn't talk much and just knocked on things every day. The two's smooth cooperation made the people watching behind them unhappy. Thus, they started to create all kinds of difficult and scary scenes. They even put in some snakes, insects, rats, and ants to scare them. The two of them were indeed shocked at first, but they were both people with strong adaptability and quickly drove away the crisis. The people outside were playing bigger and bigger, greatly increasing the difficulty of their survival. In the end, they even found people to disguise themselves as bandits. When the original owner was running away, she accidentally slipped and fell down the hill. The back of her head hit something sharp and she died. Her life stopped at the age of 19 forever. The group of people outside who were watching the surveillance cameras were shocked when they realized that things had gotten out of hand. They paid the men who pretended to be robbers to keep the secret. This group of bandits did not want to cause any trouble, so they took the money and left. They decided to bury this secret in their hearts and never speak of it. Then this group of frightened students took a cruise ship and left the deserted island. They didn't even bring the bookworm Enchanting back. After returning to school, they all agreed that Enchanting and the original owner didn't go out with them at all. These two people didn't fit in with the group, so no one suspected them. Chapter 5346. This was also their plan from the beginning. Other than the class, no one else knew about it. In addition, there were many capable families in this group. Thus, the disappearance of the original owner and Enchanting was covered up just like that. At first, they were scared witless, afraid that Enchanting would come back. But Enchanting never came back. They gradually believed that Enchanting either died on that island or that no one passed by there. He had always been there. 10 years later, most of these classmates had successful careers. Someone in the class organized a class reunion. After not seeing each other for so many years, they really wanted to meet up. But they didn't know that the person who sent the invitation was Enchanting. This class reunion was a gathering on a cruise ship. This was a normal activity, so no one suspected anything. No one knew that the cruise ship was heading to the same isolated island as before. They had long forgotten the location of the isolated island. At this time, beautiful villas had been built on the island. It was very different from before. On the first day that this group of classmates moved in, people started to die. One died every day. This experience was like a nightmare. In the end, only 2 people survived. Bai Tian and her boyfriend Jiang Yicheng. Bai Tian's boyfriend, Jiang Yicheng, was the only family member in the class who was brought in. It was because of him that Bai Tian was able to keep her life. The person who planned all of this was the quiet bookworm, Enchanting. The bad games that his classmates played back then had left a huge psychological shadow on him. At first, he really thought that he and the original owner had accidentally transmigrated and tried their best to survive. The original owner was chased by bandits and fell down a hill and died. Later, all the danger was gone. Later, he lived alone on the island. One day, he found that there were cameras on the island. Even though there was no electricity, he still understood that he hadn't transmigrated. He had been played. After that, he thought of a way to get out. It took him a long time to build a beautiful island and let those people die here. In the end, Bai Tian and Jiang Yiqing escaped and brought the police. Mu Xiaoning saw that he couldn't kill Bai Tian. Perhaps he felt that there was no point in killing such a small character, so he didn't persist. If he let Bai Tian live in this world, she probably wouldn't be able to live in peace for the rest of her life. Before Mu Xiaoning jumped into the sea, Bai Tian questioned him why he was doing this. Why did he do such a vile and cruel thing? It was rare for Mu Xiaoning to speak, and it was also rare for Bai Tian to hear him speak. I learned from you guys to play a game. I didn't expect that I would accidentally lose dozens of lives. I'm sorry, I went a little overboard. Mu Xiaoning's last words were Bai Tian's nightmare. For the rest of his life, he spent every week doing psychological counseling. Indeed, it was as Mu Xiaoning had thought. Living was worse than death. After looking through the memories, Tang Guo couldn't help but say to the system, "You really can't provoke someone who looks like an honest person." She only wanted to say one thing about what Mu Xiaoning had done. It was really well done. Unfortunately, he had also paid with his life for this. To be honest, it was still not worth it. If not for these things, Mu Xiaoning's life would definitely be very exciting. The person who could come up with such a perfect plan was definitely a genius. Tang Guo was thinking that the purpose of her coming here was to complete the original owner's life, and also to stop Mu Xiaoning from ruining his life because of those scum. Chapter 5347. After all, it was not worth it to ruin her life for a scumbag. Tang Guo came out of the toilet. It had only been 3 minutes since she received the memory, so no one in the dormitory suspected anything. When Tang Guo came out, she was met with 3 pairs of eyes. First, she looked at Tao Jejia. She remembered that in the plot, Tao Jejia was hanged by a scarf. The scarf was a famous brand and was very expensive. Her death was very tragic. Her gaze fell on Wei Yan. Wei Yan was electrocuted because she never left her computer. Mu Xiaoning gave her such a way to die. Finally, she looked at Bai Tian. The living were actually more miserable than the dead. Perhaps Bai Tian regretted what happened in the past, but Mu Xiaoning would not choose to forgive her. Instead, he planned to take revenge. The 3 of them wanted to say something, but Tang Guo's gaze gave them a bad feeling. There was some pity in it, and they were confused. Tang Guo did not look at them, because she was going to do her part-time job. If she was late, her money would be deducted. Now she was starting to integrate into the role in this world. She got on the bus and looked at the cars outside. She was thinking about what she should do this time. There was no need to kill everyone. Mu Xiaoning had already done it once. She still had to complete her studies, complete her life, and fulfill the dream of the original owner. She could not do something that would destroy her future. The incident would happen next month. It was too late to make other preparations. However, she was not happy to let these people live well. It was really difficult. This was the rule of law. It was difficult to do things. What's with her gaze? It makes me feel cold. Not long after Tang Guo left, Tao Jejia hugged her arms and trembled. It's scary. She's a little strange today. Wei Yan was confused. Did she find out about the class's plan? It shouldn't be. If she knew, she wouldn't have such a reaction. Something else probably happened. Tao Jejia pursed her lips. Actually, this is also beneficial to her. We've already prepared the compensation for her. If she can't hold on halfway through the game, we'll end it at any time. No matter how long she can hold on, we'll reward her. Her classmates saw that she was having a hard time, so they decided to help her. Bai Tian was a little worried. It's starting next month. Will there be any problems? What should we do if something happens? Aren't there surveillance cameras? There shouldn't be any problems. There are people watching over them at all times. Wei Yan said, I'm more curious about how the bookworm in class will react. To be honest, I haven't seen him say more than 2 sentences since university. I'm looking forward to it too. I wonder if the bookworm will panic when he finds out that he has transmigrated. It'll be fine by next month. Tao Jejia said excitedly. I've already bought the snacks. By then, The entire holiday will depend on the Truman's world that we've created for the two of them. One only knows how to make money, and the other is a bookworm. I wonder if there will be any sparks between them. Tian, what are you worried about? Wei Yin asked. Bai Tian said seriously, I just feel that this isn't good. What if we scare them? I don't think so. There are surveillance cameras at the scene. We'll all be watching. Don't worry. You're too timid. Also, the reward we gave out is quite a lot. A holiday can let her earn 200,000 yuan. If she knows the truth, she'll probably laugh like crazy. Chapter 5348. In Tao Jiejia's opinion, 200,000 yuan was really a lot. If not for the fact that she was afraid that her classmates would look down on her, she really wanted to participate in such a game herself and earn so much money for free. Tao Jiejia did not come from a poor family, nor was she from a special family. Her parents were both salaried workers. They lived in a city that was neither too big nor too small. Their monthly income added up to more than 10,000 yuan, but less than 20,000 yuan. Her parents had always thought that Tao Jiejia was promising since she was young. She was pretty, had a sweet mouth and had good grades. Therefore, no matter what Tao Jiejia needed, they would try their best to satisfy her. In their opinion, their daughter should be raised well. What other families' daughters had, their daughter could not lack. According to Tao Jiejia, the students in this school had good family conditions, especially those in her class. Moreover, food and drinks were more expensive in big cities. She also needed a lot of money to maintain relationships. Therefore, Tao Jiejia's monthly living expenses were 7,000 yuan, which was already more than most college students. 7,000 yuan a month was almost half of her parents' income. However, they did not think that there was a problem. Tao Jiejia would be successful sooner or later. When she graduated and got a job, her salary would not be a mere 7,000 yuan. Their thinking was not wrong. As long as Tao Jiejia studied seriously in this school and studied well, her future job would indeed be more than 7,000 yuan. However, they neglected one thing. Tao Jiejia was used to the lives of the rich. 7,000 yuan was not enough for her. Her spending level seriously exceeded her family's income. That was not necessarily a good thing. Everything she had was not cheap. She liked to talk about branded clothes and cosmetics with her classmates. She also gradually understood that it was not easy to rely on her own efforts to climb up the social ladder. However, there was a shortcut on campus. That was to find a rich boyfriend and lock him in. The best would be to get married after graduation and get pregnant after marriage. Then, she would not have to suffer in this life. Now, she was using the money her parents gave her to build herself. After a whole semester of hard work, she really found a rich second-generation boyfriend. At present, the relationship between the two of them was quite good. She often went to parties with her boyfriend. They were all people of the same social class. That made Tao Jiejia want to blend in. Speaking of which, one of the masterminds of the game on the isolated island was Tao Jiejia's rich boyfriend, Chen Kangel. Chen Kangel also had a good friend, who was also in the class. His name was Dooley, and he had been pursuing Tanghua since the first year of university. He was used to seeing the gorgeous roses in the big city. The sudden appearance of a different flower attracted his attention. Many people thought that the original owner was the kind of person who was short of money. After all, she would stand for 200 or 300 yuan every week until her legs went soft. Dooley also thought that as long as he had enough money, he would definitely be able to get Tanghua. From the very beginning, he would have been able to get Tanghua to agree in a month at most. However, it had been more than a year now, and all of Tanghua's pursuers had returned in failure. Dooley was no exception. It was also by chance that the group of people thought of playing this game. They felt that since Tanghua didn't want Dooley's money and didn't accept expensive gifts, she was probably a little aloof. She loved money so much. How could she not like money? When the game was over, they would give her some rewards. Among them, most of the rewards were given by the few masterminds. Chapter 5349. These people wanted to see Tanghua's panicked appearance on the isolated island. They also wanted to see the anger she would feel when she realized that it was all a trap, and that everything was fake. When the other party was angry, they would take out the reward. Her expression would definitely be very colorful. As for the bookworm Mu Xiaoning, it was a temporary uprising. They felt that it was not fun to leave Tang Guo alone on the island, so they found her a companion. Maybe she could even have some sparks with this bookworm. Unexpectedly, in addition to the accident, they also suffered retribution from the bookworm Mu Xiaoning. I'm going out later. It's Friday today, so I won't be back tonight. Tao Jejia sat in front of the mirror and put on makeup. Kong Le called me earlier and said that I have to attend a friend's birthday party. Okay, Wei Yin said. Bai Tian said, be careful. Tao Jejia smiled and responded. Bai Tian was always so timid. Why would she need to be careful when going out with her boyfriend? At 9 o'clock in the evening, Tang Guo returned to the dormitory from her part-time job. Only Bai Tian and Wei Yin were there. Hearing her return, Wei Yin was still staring at the computer and had no intention of turning around. Bai Tian said a few words to Tang Guo. Tang Guo, are you going out tomorrow? Yes, I've already made an appointment. I have to earn back my living expenses next week. In fact, the original owner had saved a little money. Although it was not much, it could be used for emergencies. She did not plan to use the money she saved. If there was an emergency, she could still use it. You work part-time every weekend. Aren't you tired? Hearing Bai Tian's words, Tang Guo looked back at the young girl sitting by the bed and replied, I'm tired. How can I not be tired? But if I don't work, I have no money. Without money I can't eat. My tuition fees are still on loan. I can't owe more money. This was the first time Tang Guo mentioned that her tuition fees were on loan. This surprised Bai Tian. She looked like a little princess who had never experienced the hardships of life and had grown up in the palm of someone's hand. Your tuition fees are on loan too? Your parents don't pay for your tuition fees? That's too much. From Bai Tian's point of view, parents who didn't pay for their children's school fees were extremely evil. How could there be such annoying parents in this world? If her parents didn't pay her tuition, she would ignore them for the rest of her life. Tang Guo saw that Bai Tian was angry and shocked, but she just smiled. There were many people like Bai Tian in this world who didn't know the hardships of the world. My parents are very good to me. They raised me up and even sent me to university. They have done their duty. I was the one who asked for the tuition loan. If they really have to pay me, then they can only eat salted vegetables and white rice every day. Even so, they always ask me if I have money to spend. They will give me money, but I don't want it. My mother's health isn't very good. She's not working now. Only my father works at home. My grandmother is sick too. Now she needs a sum of money to buy medicine every month. Bai Tian almost said, why is your family so poor? Why did they have to raise a child when they were so poor? How could one raise a child without money? When he heard the latter part of the sentence, he instinctively felt that it wasn't appropriate to say that. He opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say for a moment. I've never heard you talk about this in the past. Bai Tian. From what you said, it sounds like your parents are quite good to you. Of course they are very good. Otherwise, would I have been able to grow up well and get into this university? Chapter 5350. Tang Guo looked at Bai Tian's eyes and knew that she was a little princess who had been spoiled since she was young. It was normal that she didn't know about this. Everyone's life was different. Some people would spend their entire lives struggling with the hardships of life, while others would never be able to see this side of life in their entire lives. The original owner never complained about fate, because there were people more miserable than her in this world. Although she had a mother who was in poor health and couldn't work to earn money. However, her mother could cook a pot of delicious food and take care of her in every possible way. She made sure that she was clean and tidy. Her father wasn't very capable and was only at the bottom of the working class. He received a salary of a few thousand yuan every month and couldn't buy her all kinds of beautiful and fun gifts. But before she went to university, her father would send her to school and then to work every day. After school he would pick her up. She had a sick grandmother and spent half of the family's income every month. To her it wasn't a burden. When her grandmother wasn't so sick, the clothes and shoes she wore were all made by her grandmother. Whenever her grandmother saw a beautiful style, she would think about it and make it for her. Actually, at that time, her classmates were all very envious of her. So, although their family wasn't rich, and they were going through a very difficult life, they were all happy. The original owner had been working hard to not let herself down, and not let down the people in her family who loved her. She wanted to get into a good university, and have a good job in the future to change the current situation of her family. She saved a sum of money, because she was afraid that her family would suddenly need money. She wanted to give it to her family directly, but with her parents' personalities, they definitely wouldn't want it. At first, her parents were very sad that she had to work part-time to earn living expenses. They felt that it was too tiring. But when they saw that she could really do it, they gradually felt relieved. So, her family was really good. It wasn't that those people thought that her family was harsh on her, and didn't give her tuition fees, or living expenses. The original owner didn't say it, because there was no need to say it to these people. Their experiences were different. Although they were in the same space, they lived in different worlds. They wouldn't understand. If she said it, it would just become a point for others to talk about. She was very strong, but sometimes she was sensitive and had low self-esteem. As a young girl who wasn't even 20 years old, she more or less had some face. She didn't like people always talking about her family. Tang Guo was removing her makeup, so the dormitory was a little quiet. Bai Tian didn't know what to say. She had never met such a family before. In fact, she really felt that if she did not have enough financial strength, it would be better not to raise a child. Otherwise, it would be as tough as Tang Guo. Just thinking about it made her feel a little suffocated. If her children were to suffer like this, she would definitely be very sad and feel that she was incompetent. Tang Guo looked at her, and knew that she didn't understand. But she didn't bother to say anything. After all, their identities meant that they were from two different worlds. After removing her makeup and washing up, Tang Guo pulled down the bed curtain and lay down. She was going to be forced to make a profit as soon as she came over. She hadn't even told her friends in the group yet. Thinking about how she had to go out early the next morning, she felt tired. However, given the current situation, she couldn't find another way to make money, so she could only do this for the time being. She would think of other ways to make money after the island game was settled. Chapter 53-51. School bell. Everyone, I've arrived in the new world. Let's check in. Margaret. Sure enough, she didn't come to the magic world again. There's no love. Forget it, I'm used to it. School bell, how's the new world? School bell. It's a modern world. I'm currently a sophomore. Tang Guo briefly told the story of this world to the people in the group. As usual, after chatting for a while, she went to sleep. Margaret. When will Margaret be able to wait for the school bell to appear? Fortunately, I have a long life. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't be able to wait. Margaret. It's all thanks to Margaret being a genius that her lifespan can continue to extend. Emoyintian. Speaking of which, time should pass slower on your side. It probably hasn't been many years. Qi Xiao. Yes, as long as Margaret isn't in the group, we'll wait for her for several years. She said that she hasn't been there for half a day. Zian. So it's not that Margaret can wait, but that we've been waiting for hundreds of years, and she's only been waiting for a few days? Margaret. You can't make friends if you talk like this. At least, Margaret doesn't want to be friends with you. On Saturday, Tang Guo worked for half a day in the morning. On the weekend, she worked for the whole day. It was rare that she had work to do on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. After working for 3 days, she earned a total of 500 yuan, which was already a considerable income for the original owner. Anyway, she couldn't spend so much money in a week, and she could save more than half. On the weekend evening, she went back to school. At this time, the local students who had gone home gradually returned to school. She got off the bus and walked to the school gate. There were still a lot of people at this time, and the school gate was a little crowded. The snack street not far outside was already brightly lit, and people came and went. Going out shopping was something that the original owner couldn't do even once in half a year. First, she didn't have time, Second, the food on the street was too delicious. She was afraid that she couldn't resist the temptation to spend money to buy food. So she didn't go out shopping. The rest of the time was basically reading and planning for her future. It wasn't that she hadn't thought of starting a business and selling some things in school. Not to mention that there were already people doing this. Just talking about the time, she might not be able to care about it. After all, her main purpose was to study. She couldn't lose the big picture for the small things. If that happened, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. After a busy day, she was a little tired. Fortunately, she could still practice her inner force at night and relax her muscles. Tangwa. Just as she took a few steps into the school gate, she heard a voice. She stood still and looked around, looking for the person who called her. This voice sounded a little unfamiliar. She searched her mind for the owner of this voice, but she couldn't remember who it belonged to. Soon, she found the owner of the voice. He was standing not far behind her, carrying a casual backpack. His hair was a little longer than the average guy's. Her scattered hair almost covered her eyes. Fortunately, the man was wearing a pair of glasses, which blocked his hair, so that it wouldn't affect his eyes. When he came closer, Tangwa asked, "Mu Xiaoning, were you the one who called me just now?" Yes. Mu Xiaoning was much taller than Tangwa, but he was dressed in black. He was skinnier and looked gloomy. Tangwa was a little surprised that he took the initiative to call her. She was sizing him up inadvertently. Chapter 53-52. In her memory, Mu Xiaoning had never taken the initiative to greet the original owner of the body. He still called her by her full name. It should be said that Mu Xiaoning didn't like to talk to people. He always sat in the corner of the classroom and didn't communicate with anyone. So he wasn't popular. Now that he had suddenly called her out in public, it was a little strange. "What's the matter?" Mu Xiaoning didn't answer. He just took a step and looked back at Tangwa, as if he was gesturing for Tangwa to follow him. Tangwa hurriedly followed him. Mu Xiaoning took out a cruise ticket from his pocket. Everyone in the class had one for the class gathering next month. Actually, next month was considered a holiday, so they had time to play this game. "Are you going to the cruise party next month?" It was harder to make Mu Xiaoning say so much at once. Tangwa realized that something was wrong with Mu Xiaoning. This was something that had never happened in his memory. Did the other party know something? Or did something happen? "Of course I'm going. Isn't that a party that the whole class can't miss? It's not good to be special alone. There's a lucky draw on the cruise. Maybe I'll be lucky enough to get a prize to take home." The original owner of the body had taken a fancy to the massage chair among the lucky draw prizes on the cruise, and wanted to try her luck. If she could get a massage chair, she could take it home for her family to use. She had thought that this was a cruise company's event, but she hadn't known that this was a trap set up by her classmates. "Why? Is there a problem?" "No." Mu Xiaoning put the ticket back into his pocket and looked at Tangwa with a slightly sluggish gaze. "Please take care of me then." With that, Mu Xiaoning left. After a few steps, he turned back and walked to Tangwa. "Have you been on a cruise before?" "No," Tangwa replied. "Have you sat on it before?" "Yes," Mu Xiaoning answered. "You can follow me. Don't be afraid." Perhaps Mu Xiaoning felt that he was a little too talkative tonight and said a lot of unnecessary things. So he turned around and left quickly. He had only suddenly seen Tangwa and came over to remind her of something. How did he become so talkative? In the darkness, he turned back to look at Tangwa, who was still standing in the same spot with a strange expression on her face. Afraid that Tangwa would notice him looking back, Mu Xiaoning hurriedly turned around and hastened back to the dormitory. Perhaps it was because too much time had passed that he had already forgotten this classmate's personality. That was why he felt that she was a little different from how she was in the past. That's right, they weren't familiar with each other in the first place. Even though they had only spent about 10 days together in that place, it was normal that he didn't know her well. Therefore, it was not strange that she was different. Mu Xiaoning touched the ticket in his pocket and pinched it hard. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, and his expression was very strange. Last time, they didn't manage to kill all of them. There was still a fish that escaped the net. Who would have thought that he would return, and even return to the beginning? This time, he would first give them a surprise. Then, he would kill them one by one, and let them die in a nightmare. Their expressions when they died should be very horrified. This time, there was no outsider called Jiang Yicheng on the island. How could Bai Tian escape? This time, he couldn't let them die so quickly. Otherwise, it wouldn't be painful at all. I feel it too. It's not a natural murderous aura. It's a murderous aura that only exists after killing someone. System sob so scary. Chapter 53-53. Host, do you mean that Mu Xiaoning killed someone? The system figured it out. Don't you feel that something's wrong with him? He never likes to communicate with his classmates, and almost never takes the initiative to speak. But tonight he stopped me and said so much. It's not his style at all. He even deliberately took out the ticket, and mentioned the class activity next month. Was Mu Xiaoning transmigrated or reborn? I didn't have much time with him just now, so I don't know. But I'm sure that he probably knows what will happen a month later. He wants to remind me of something, but for some reason, he won't tell me the truth. I'm guessing that he wants to do something a month later. What does he want to do? If he's reborn, he'll most likely wipe out the entire class this time. The system couldn't help but shiver. Thinking of Mu Xiaoning's angry revenge at the end, it was indeed possible. If he's transmigrated, I don't know what the other party will do. He might beat them at their own game, and teach them a lesson. The worst-case scenario would be for them to lose their lives on the isolated island. Tang Guo paused for a moment before continuing. But just now, I felt a terrible murderous aura from him. Most of the people in the class are dead. Host, are you not going to stop him? I have to. I knew it. Host, you won't let him kill anyone. No matter if he's transmigrated or reborn. If he's reborn, you probably won't let him kill the people in the class. It had to be said that the system still understood Tang Guo a little. If she was still the host who wanted to destroy the world at all times, he wouldn't even ask this question. At that time, not only would she not stop him, she would most likely help him pass the knife. Tang Guo guessed that Mu Xiaoning wasn't simple. As for how he developed such a character, it could be acquired or congenital. If he didn't have some family background and foundation, he wouldn't have been able to live quietly for 20 years and set up such a trap that almost wiped out the entire class. Of course, these weren't important. She was still thinking about what to do on the isolated island. Since Mu Xiaoning was there, she didn't have to do much. She just had to save those people's lives at the critical moment. As for whether or not it would leave a psychological scar, that was not her concern. Everyone was going out to have fun. If something unexpected happened, it would be unexpected. The system felt that it was a little cold tonight. It glanced at Tang Guo, who was removing her makeup, and secretly went to look for Mu Xiaoning. At this moment, Mu Xiaoning was in the dormitory. It looked like he had already washed up. The curtains were drawn, and he was leaning against the bed, playing with his phone. At first, he thought that Mu Xiaoning was just casually surfing the internet for fun. After scanning the internet, he realized that he was too naive. Boss, the island is ready. We're waiting for your orders. Mu Xiaoning, yes. Don't worry, boss. The scene we've set up will definitely be unforgettable. We'll let them spend the most wonderful time of their lives in fear. Mu Xiaoning, okay. This conversation was not in Chinese, but in English. Moreover, this chatting software was not domestic. Mu Xiaoning didn't say much, but the system had already guessed that this was his arrangement. He suspected that Mu Xiaoning had been reborn. He didn't stay for long, and quickly floated back to tell Tang Guo about Mu Xiaoning's situation. Chapter 53-54. Dear host, Mu Xiaoning is most likely reborn. That island has been set up by someone. He found someone overseas to do it. This time he probably wants to do it cleanly. There are so many people in the class. If something really happens to everyone else except for me and him, it doesn't matter if it's done cleanly or not. We will definitely be suspected. Even if we find someone overseas, they will still trace it back to him. He won't be able to escape. Also, he probably didn't choose to do this, because he didn't want to escape. He was just unhappy and wanted to take revenge on those people. He's so negative and doesn't leave a way out for himself. He obviously doesn't have much hope in this world. This might have something to do with the environment he grew up in. From the memories, it could be seen that Mu Xiaoning had done well in those 20 years. If he could forget that incident, his life would be bright. However, he still chose to end those people's lives in this way, and end his own life at the same time. I'm tired today. I plan to sleep. Tongzi, help me check if Mu Xiaoning had any special experiences. Okay, I'll go take a look first. I'll tell you tomorrow morning. Tang Guo washed up and looked at the time. It was 9:30. She was the only one in the dormitory. The others should have activities, but they would most likely be back before 11. After all, there was a routine dormitory check on Sunday night. After a good night's sleep, Tang Guo woke up on Monday morning. The other 3 roommates were all there. She had class in the morning, so she didn't sleep and slowly got up to tidy up. If she didn't work part-time, the original owner usually didn't know how to put on makeup. She basically just put on some moisturizer and drew her eyebrows. It was simple and fast and wouldn't take up too much time. When she was done tidying up, the other 3 roommates had just gotten up. At this time, she had already gone to the cafeteria for breakfast. To the original owner, the school breakfast was the most cost-effective. It was cheap and easy to eat. She was very active every time she ate breakfast. She usually didn't eat with her roommates. They had different circles and basically didn't play together. She was busier and poorer. Tao Jiejia and the other 2 often ate outside. It was a bit difficult for her to have a meal together. She might have to scrimp and save for many days. It wasn't worth it. Those 3 people also knew about her situation, so they basically wouldn't invite her. When the first year of university had just started, they would invite her to eat together a few times. Later, the original owner refused, saying that her family wasn't very well off, and she couldn't go out to eat like that often. Tao Jiejia often talked about this matter with many people, which made the original owner lose face. Of course, she was very busy and didn't have time to care about face, so she could only let the people around her talk. Anyway, everyone in the class knew that she was very poor, and many of them were not very willing to play with her. They felt that it was uncomfortable to play with her, and they also felt that she was a little stingy. She had to calculate everything clearly. However, the original owner still had people who went to class with her. Even if they weren't very sociable, there were still 1 or 2 who could play together. This person was in the same class as her and lived in the dormitory next door. Tang Guo had already arrived at the door of Xiang Wen's dormitory. According to the procedure, she knocked on the door. Xiang Wen, are you done? Let's go down and eat. Coming right away, I'm still missing an eyebrow. Xiang Wen's voice came from inside. Xiang Wen's family was relatively ordinary. Her monthly living expenses were around 1,500, which was normal for a university student. Chapter 53-55. The dormitory door had already been opened. Tang Guo was standing at the door, watching Xiang Wen busy herself. 2 minutes later, a medium-sized girl with dark skin came to the door with a book. She had put on light makeup. It was winter now, so she was wearing a short white down jacket, a skirt and leggings. The leggings weren't the thickest kind either. It's too difficult to get out of bed in this weather. I still have class on Monday morning. It's really killing me. Let's go. It'll be very warm after drinking some soy milk or porridge later. Tang Guo said. Xiang Wen didn't think that anything was wrong, nor did she realize that the Tang Guo in front of her was no longer the Tang Guo from before. The original owner of the body and Xiang Wen's friendship was established during military training. From then until now, they basically went to the classroom together and ate together. Xiang Wen's living expenses didn't allow her to go out often to spend extravagantly. She still had to save money to buy other things she needed, so it was very cost-effective to eat in the school cafeteria. The 2 of them went to the cafeteria, bought breakfast and started eating. The system was reporting Mu Xiaoning's situation to Tang Guo. Tang Guo listened as she ate. Xiang Wen didn't wake up much and didn't feel like talking in the morning. She ate breakfast quietly and didn't notice that Tang Guo's expression was a little strange. Mu Xiaoning's parents died in an accident. His parents' business was very big both domestically and abroad, and they left behind a rich inheritance. He has a second uncle, who is very concerned about his inheritance. Unfortunately, his parents had already made arrangements when they were alive. Mu Xiaoning's custody didn't fall to his second uncle, and if Mu Xiaoning died in an accident, all his assets would be donated. His cousin who played well with him when he was young was just coaxing him, hoping that he would give up all his assets. It's really scary. His playmates all have other motives. No wonder he doesn't want to make friends. Mu Xiaoning is very smart, but he rarely shows his talent. Perhaps it's because there were too many people with bad intentions around him when he was young, so he didn't want to live a high-profile life. He was very simple when it came to food and clothing. No one knew that he had such a large sum of money. When he was able to legally inherit and deal with his own assets, he sold off some of the businesses that he couldn't manage. He only left a part of them for his manager to help him manage. As for the second uncle who coveted his family's assets, he had also used some means to send him to prison. People like his second uncle are more or less a little dirty. If someone deliberately sets him up, it's very easy for him to go to jail. As the host knows, some foreign countries are very strict about tax evasion, because this person has spent most of his life. So, he chose to return to China after dealing with those troublesome matters? Yes, he feels that life in China is quieter, and he wants to live a peaceful life as an ordinary person. No wonder. Everyone in the class thought that his family background was ordinary. After all, they all knew that his parents were dead. I didn't expect him to be a hidden big shot and quite rich. It was easy for him to set up that island. She felt that in her memory, Mu Xiaoning had only chosen to take revenge 20 years later, because he had been trapped on that deserted island for a very long time. The people in the class had clearly chosen that island, because it was very desolate and not big. There was no unique scenery on it. When something happened and Mu Xiaoning didn't appear, they were very relieved, and thought that Mu Xiaoning had died on that island. Chapter 53-56. After eating breakfast, Tang Guo began her daily life as a college student. Xiangwen was with her all day long. Through their interactions, she found that Xiangwen was a good person. She had some small shortcomings, but they were not harmful. Maybe it was because her friendship with the original host wasn't that deep. Or maybe it was because of other reasons. Xiangwen could watch the original host being chosen as the main character of the game, and still watch indifferently from the side. Even after the original owner died, Xiangwen did not reveal anything. She did not find it strange. That was because human nature was like this. Xiangwen and the original owner were not that close. She would not put herself in danger for a dead original owner. Xiangwen, the holidays are next month. Will you go to the class cruise party? Now they were in a library. Xiangwen did not expect Tang Guo to suddenly ask this. She was stunned. Why do you ask? Aren't you going? It's a cruise ship. It's probably the only time in your life. It's free, and there's a lucky draw. You said that you liked the massage chair, and wanted to try your luck. Why? Something happened and you can't go? No, I'm just asking. There are so many students in the class. Will they all go? Didn't the class monitor say that everyone has to go this time? It's free food and drinks, and there's a lucky draw. We can't let down the students who stopped this party, right? They're paying for it. If we don't go, it'll be too embarrassing. We don't know how to be human. Tang Guo paused. She inadvertently observed Xiangwen from the corner of her eye. She found that Xiangwen was very nervous. She sighed softly. It seemed that Xiangwen had known about this for a long time, and was in cahoots with those people. It's just that I haven't seen my parents and grandmother for a semester. I missed them a little. I was planning to spend half of the holiday working part-time to earn living expenses, and the rest of the holiday to go back and take care of my grandmother and spend time with my family. Tang Guo sighed. This is a half-month cruise. When we come back, the holiday will be over. Xiangwen saw that Tang Guo did not want to go, so she quickly persuaded her. She said that such an opportunity was really rare. And if she really didn't go, it wouldn't be good for her in class in the future. In the end, Tang Guo reluctantly said that it was better to go. She couldn't disrespect her classmate. She saw Xiangwen heave a sigh of relief and didn't say anything else. She held the book in her hand and started reading. He wondered if this game would be beneficial to Xiangwen. If that was the case, Xiangwen would definitely meet with those people when she was free and talk about how she had almost given up. Tongzi, help me keep an eye on Xiangwen. See if she has any contact with Du Li and the others. Now that he thought about it, in his memory, Xiangwen had indeed spoken up for Du Li many times. Such a situation seemed to be quite common. At night, Tang Guo returned to the dormitory. The system spoke to her. Dear host, Xiangwen sent a message to Du Li. It's about how you almost didn't want to go today. Let me forward it to you. Xiangwen. Today, Tang Guo suddenly talked about the cruise next month. I almost didn't want to go. Du Li. What about now? Xiangwen. I persuaded her for a long time. I told her that it wasn't good to do this, and that it would disrespect her classmate. Only then did she give up the idea of not going. My mouth was dry from all the talking. Du Li, thank you for your hard work. You have to pay more attention to this. She must participate in this game. Then he sent her a red packet. Xiangwen, don't worry. I'll be watching. When the time comes, you'll definitely save her life and win her heart. You're such a devoted person. I don't know what she's worried about. Chapter 53-57. After reading Xiangwen and Du Li's conversation, Tang Guo finally understood a little. Du Li had given Xiangwen benefits, so Xiangwen probably thought that this was a harmless game. Since she knew that this was a game, she knew that the original host would make a fool of herself. Saying things like a hero saving the beauty and winning the beauty's heart were probably just words to flatter Du Li. At the end of the day, the original host and Xiangwen were just strangers who had met by chance. They weren't reliable friends. If a true friend knew that their good friend was going to encounter such a thing, they would definitely be angry and think of ways to stop it. They wouldn't think that Du Li was doing this for the original host's good. Instead, they would think that Du Li was a scumbag who couldn't get her. So he planned this game to make a fool of himself. If nothing happened, and the original host was still alive, after finding out that this was a game, she might become the joke of the class many years later. Tang Guo didn't test Xiangwen again. There was no need. The system showed her the conversation between Xiangwen and Du Li. Xiangwen had received many benefits, and would often say things like why the original host didn't agree when Du Li was so good. There was a hint of jealousy in her words. Mu Xiaoning didn't talk to Tang Guo again, but when they were in class, Tang Guo could feel his gaze sweeping over her from time to time. If it weren't for the special circumstances, she really wanted to walk over and talk to Mu Xiaoning. She was afraid that their interaction would affect her future plans and ruin Mu Xiaoning's plans. How bad would that be? However, one day, she received a friend request from Mu Xiaoning. After she accepted the friend request, no one spoke for the first day. On the third day, when it was almost bedtime, Mu Xiaoning suddenly sent her a message. Mu Xiaoning, are you asleep? Tang Guo, no, what's the matter? Mu Xiaoning, no. Tang Guo, oh. System, what kind of stupid chat is this? Are you sure you won't die if you chat like this? He could tell that something was wrong with Mu Xiaoning. How could great host be so impatient to talk so much to a boring person? This boring person's identity was obviously not ordinary. He made a blind guess. It must be that guy. Mu Xiaoning, are you sleepy? Tang Guo, I'm fine. Mu Xiaoning, you want to sleep? Tang Guo, play with your phone for a while. Mu Xiaoning, what game? Tang Guo, just browsing. Mu Xiaoning, what do you think the future will be like? Tang Guo looked at the long message and thought for a while. Then she replied, he should be very happy and busy. Tang Guo replied as the original owner of the body. For the original owner, it should be like this. With a decent job and a decent salary, he could finally change his family's life. Of course, he was busy and happy. Mu Xiaoning looked at this sentence and was a little confused. What was the meaning of this? Being busy meant being tired. If you were tired, would you still be happy? What was happiness? Ever since his parents had passed away, he hadn't felt it. After his parents passed away, his world was filled with fake smiles and deceit. Mu Xiaoning, I'm going to sleep. Mu Xiaoning, sleep early. Mu Xiaoning, good night. From that night onwards, Mu Xiaoning would send Tang Guo a message every time before he went to sleep. The two of them talked about very nonsensical topics. The system watched with relish. Since this was that guy, Great Host would definitely not allow him to kill the people in this class. Otherwise, how could the two of them live a carefree life in the future? Time passed in the blink of an eye. The first semester of the second year ended. Chapter 53-58. The students from the other classes left the school one after another and rushed back to their homes all over the country. Only Tang Guo's class stayed in school for the time being. On the third day of the holiday, all the students in the class appeared at the school gate and were taken by a bus to the port to board a cruise ship. The cruise ship would last for half a month, so all the students had brought enough daily necessities and clothes. It was winter now, so Tang Guo had to bring a suitcase to carry winter clothes and some daily necessities. What a big cruise ship. It has so many floors. I thought it was a small cruise ship, but I didn't expect it to be so big and luxurious. Xiangwen pulled her suitcase and stood beside Tang Guo. Now that they are lining up, the students are walking slowly. So Xiangwen kept whispering in Tang Guo's ear about what she saw in front of her. Tang Guo glanced at the crowd and found Mu Xiaoning's position. He was still wearing black clothes and a black fishing hat that basically covered his eyes. He was pulling a black suitcase in his hand. Perhaps he sensed Tang Guo's gaze, but he raised his head and looked at Tang Guo. Tang Guo didn't dodge. Instead, she looked at him. A few minutes later, everyone boarded the cruise ship. After counting the number of people, they were assigned rooms. Then, the staff on the cruise ship introduced the cruise ship. Xiang Wen, who was standing beside Tang Guo, was very excited. It was the first time she had been to such a luxurious place since she was young. There were still many excited students in the class, but their expressions were very calm. There were also many students who were used to all this. Based on Bai Tian, Wei Yan, Chen Kangel, and Du Li's background, this place was ordinary. It wasn't a place worth being amazed. After all, they had seen more luxurious and spectacular scenes than this. As for Tao Jejia, she was actually very excited. Although she often went to some big places with her boyfriend, Chen Kangel, it was the first time she was on a cruise ship. Moreover, it was such a big and luxurious cruise ship. However, she had always been good at pretending. She tried her best to look indifferent, as if she had been to such places countless times. In fact, her little disguise was useless. This was the first time he had experienced something like this. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell with a single glance, but no one would say it out loud. Everyone, let's rest first. There's still a program in the evening. If you don't want to rest, you can go to the other floors to see if there's anything you want to play. Just now, the service staff has already introduced it. There are many fun places here. Since we're here, of course we have to have fun. Du Li held the microphone and said to everyone. Tang Guo watched as the crowd gradually dispersed and returned to her room. According to the plan of Du Li and the others, they would create a small accident tomorrow night and put something in their cups in advance. After she and Mu Xiaoning fainted, they would ask someone to drive the cruise ship to that deserted island. The higher-ups had already arranged everything. In reality, these people had no idea that Mu Xiaoning had long taken control of the entire island. The only people who were allowed to play on the island were this group of students who didn't mind causing trouble. There are no surveillance cameras in the room, right? No, Madam Host, this room is very safe. If you're worried, I'll block the signal for you. Chapter 53-59. Okay. After the system blocked the signal, Tang Guo rummaged through the system space and finally found some array discs. Since she was going to play, she might as well make it big. She had plenty of time to play slowly. It would be good to spend more time on the island. She had already informed her family that she would work part-time during the holidays and would not go back this year. Tang Guo found the array discs, mainly to throw them around the island, so that no one would be able to find this place. She wanted to avoid unexpected accidents midway through the game. She did not want to kill these people. She just had the same idea as them. They had been classmates for more than a year. She just wanted to play a small game with them. She threw the array discs, and Mu Xiaoning was in charge of playing games with them. It sounded like a good idea. Nothing happened on the first day. At this time, many students were enjoying the sea breeze on the deck, taking photos, playing cards, playing games, drinking coffee, and doing a series of leisurely activities. There were also some students who were playing some games on other levels. Other than the necessary group activities and meals, Tang Guo was in the room. Her actions were similar to the original owners, so no one suspected her. As for Xiang Wen, she went everywhere to play. She did not intend to force Tang Guo to play with her. It was finally the second night. Tang Guo was sitting at the dining table. Tonight was a group activity, a seafood dinner. Many students had never seen the seafood on the table. The price was frighteningly expensive. Tang Guo glanced at it hurriedly. She felt that Du Li and the others were really willing to spend a lot of money to play this game. Mu Xiaoning was different from what she remembered. He was not sitting in the corner. Instead, he was sitting beside her. When Du Li raised his glass, and everyone was about to stand up and clink glasses, Tang Guo picked up the glass. It was filled with drinks. Like everyone else, she drank the drink in the glass. Then, everyone continued to enjoy the delicious seafood. She noticed that many people were looking at her, and Mu Xiaoning from time to time. Even Xiang Wen looked a little nervous and expectant when she saw her. Needless to say, her roommate's expressions didn't look very natural. Do you find it strange? At this moment, Mu Xiaoning's gloomy voice rang in Tang Guo's ears. He placed his hand on the wine glass and gently swirled the red wine inside. The wine was about to sway out of the glass, but when he pulled back, it all fell back into the glass. He was still wearing the black hat, which covered most of his face. It was difficult to see the emotions in his eyes. From Tang Guo's position, she could only see Mu Xiaoning's tall nose and beautifully curved lips. She clearly saw Mu Xiaoning's lips curl up slightly, as if he had discovered something fun. His fingers were slender and slightly white. Perhaps it was because he kept them in his pocket all year round, and didn't see much light. What are you talking about? Tang Guo pretended not to understand. Strange. Didn't you notice? Why is everyone looking at us from time to time? Mu Xiaoning raised his head gently, revealing his eyes. They didn't look like the eyes of a boy who was less than 20 years old. It was too calm. No, it should be said that it was dead silent. There was no light at all. Occasionally, there would be a flash of playful interest. It meant that he was here to play, and didn't want to live a good life in this world. Or rather, he had experienced too many disappointments. He couldn't see the beauty of this world, and only felt bored. Chapter 5360. Did they find out about our chat? Mu Xiaoning hadn't expected Tang Guo to answer like that. His dark eyes froze for a moment, and he asked, "Did you tell anyone else about this?" "What I mean is, did you share this with your good friend?" Mu Xiaoning added, as if he felt that his tone was a little stiff. Tang Guo held back her smile and pretended to ask strangely, "Of course not. I'm not that free. Weren't you the one who shared it with others?" "What are you thinking? How could I possibly show this to others?" Mu Xiaoning said in a deep voice. Soon, his tone changed a little, as if he was trying to control himself. "I'm not that kind of person. I believe you," Mu Xiaoning said. "I don't mean to blame you." "I know." Mu Xiaoning lowered his hat and continued to swirl his wine glass. "Do you think they're looking at us strangely because we're chatting? I thought so before, but I don't think so now. Do you know why?" Mu Xiaoning didn't look up again. His voice was very low and deep, as if he was being suppressed by the entire sea. "Perhaps they're thinking of some show to mock us? They're always so bored." "That's possible." Tang Guo replied. "It seems to be true. We usually don't participate in class activities. Maybe that's the case." Mu Xiaoning didn't say anything else. Instead, he fell silent. Actually, he was a little hesitant about bringing Tang Guo to the island. After all, what he had done should be very scary and bloody to her. It might scare her. Actually, he really wanted to bring her up and let her see with her own eyes how scared those people were. He looked up again, and saw that Tang Guo was already looking elsewhere. He sized her up, gripped his wine glass tightly and lowered his head. It was about time. She wasn't suitable for such a game at all. Forget it. Let her stay on the cruise ship and have fun. Her life was filled with hope and anticipation unlike his. This game would end everyone's lives here, including his. Only she could continue to live. Mu Xiaoning took out his phone and kept moving his fingers. No one knew that he was assigning the next task and how to play with this group of people. In fact, the two of them had only interacted for about a minute. At this moment, Tang Guo had already noticed that her classmates were more or less feeling unwell, as if they were about to fall asleep at any moment. At this moment, for some reason, the cruise ship suddenly shook. She saw that the faces of the people around her were filled with fear and disbelief. Many people were shouting, "What's going on?" Du Li, Chen Kangel, and the others looked calm, but the cruise ship still shook violently. At this moment, uncertainty finally appeared on their faces. This kind of shaking is because this hall has been specially set up. In fact, the cruise ship is still as stable as Mount Tai as it moves towards the island. The system explained in Tang Guo's ear. Mu Xiaoning probably wants everyone to believe that an accident happened on the cruise ship. Sure enough, the hall began to shake more and more violently. Many people began to vomit from the shaking, and then fainted. Seeing that it was about time, Tang Guo also fainted. What is Mu Xiaoning doing? He's leaning against the chair. He seems to have fainted, but his eyes are secretly looking at Madam Host. He seems to be very worried about you. Madam Host, believe it or not, if you fall to the ground now, he will probably come over to help you. Forget it. I'm already lying down. It'll be weird if I fall again. Chapter 5361. After an unknown period of time, perhaps because Mu Xiaoning had confirmed that everyone in the hall had fainted, the hall finally stopped shaking. Mu Xiaoning walked over to Tang Guo first. After confirming that she was fine, he felt much more at ease. "Boss, what do we do now?" "Throw everyone else on that island except her." Mu Xiaoning's tone was still as low as ever. It was as if an ethereal voice had suddenly appeared in the silent night. It was extremely frightening. "Okay, boss. Do you want to bring her back to her room?" The tall, dark-skinned man had already walked over to Tang Guo and was about to carry her when he was suddenly stopped by an arm. He looked at Mu Xiaoning in confusion. "Let me do it." "System, pfft. Boss, you look very thin and small." The dark-skinned man was a little hesitant. His boss had given him a lot of money, so of course he had to help his boss settle this small matter beautifully. He could lift an Asian little girl with one finger, but his boss was so thin and small. He felt that he couldn't do it. "System, ha 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 ha. I can." Mu Xiaoning looked up. His unquestionable gaze made the dark-skinned man take 2 steps back and make an inviting gesture. When he saw Mu Xiaoning carry Tang Guo, he even flattered him and hurriedly followed behind Mu Xiaoning. Tang Guo tried her best to hold back her smile when she heard the dark-skinned man's praise. If her tolerance skills were any worse, she might have been discovered. Mu Xiaoning put Tang Guo back in her room and had no intention of going out again. Instead, he sat on a chair in the room and leaned against the window, looking at the rippling sea outside. "Boss, what's different about her?" The dark-skinned man's sudden question broke Mu Xiaoning's silence. "You talk too much. I'm just asking. Is she the boss's sweetheart?" Mu Xiaoning. "Boss, you'll be suspected if you make so many people disappear at once." Mu Xiaoning. "You're paid to do things. Why do you care about the boss?" "I'm just reminding you kindly." Mu Xiaoning. "Talk less and do more. Will the boss be with her in the future?" The dark-skinned man wasn't threatened by Mu Xiaoning's words at all. He had taken on many jobs and could understand people like Mu Xiaoning. This little boss wasn't really angry and didn't refute, so he agreed with his answer. "No," Mu Xiaoning said as he looked at the surface of the sea. The big dark-skinned man's curiosity was ignited. "Why? You two look so compatible. Why isn't the boss with her?" "Do you know the story of a drop of ink and a cup of pure water?" The dark-skinned man. "Boss, you can explain. A drop of ink will make a cup of pure water impure. I am that drop of ink." The big black man scratched his head. "Boss, Have you heard of the story of a drop of ink in an ocean? Mu Xiaoning. A drop of ink is nothing to an ocean. Once the ink enters the ocean, it will turn into seawater. No one will be able to discover its past, and no one will know that it was once ink. You're not suitable for this line of work. Chapter 5362. The Big Black Man said, "Boss, I think you've really misunderstood something. I'm in a legitimate business. At most, I'll evade taxes. I helped you set up this cruise ship, set up these scenes and the island. I didn't participate in anything else. Earn some hard-earned money and get those people to the island. Then my mission will be over. What you do next has nothing to do with me. With this generous salary, my wife and children will have a good life." Mu Xiaoning fell silent again. "Old He, go out. You're giving me a headache." Old He smiled at Mu Xiaoning and hurried out. At the door, he turned back and said, "Boss, that beautiful Asian girl might be your C. Actually, it's better to throw yourself into her arms. Your life will definitely be very exciting. If you talk nonsense again, I'll deduct your money." Old He quickly slipped away. Mu Xiaoning felt uncomfortable all over. He shouldn't have let Old He speak. His gaze fell on Tanggua for a long time. He maintained the same posture and didn't intend to speak. That Old He is quite fun. He knows how to talk. The system was amused by the conversation just now. Host Mu Xiaoning is doubting life. But he won't turn back. Look, he's calming down and thinking about what to do next. He has no intention of living well. Then host work harder and assimilate him quickly. Then, he won't let his imagination run wild. I'm guessing that when the time comes, he'll be very glad that he chose the other path. In the middle of the night, the cruise ship arrived at the island. Si Jiasi Jelao He led some people to move his classmates to the island. The system was scanning the island and telling Tanggua the situation there. This place has been set up to look like an abandoned town. It's modern, but no one lives there. It looks especially scary. The host's classmates were thrown to the beach and not brought to the town. According to Mu Xiaoning and Old He's conversation, they'll drive the cruise ship away and dock at another island far away from here. The signal on the cruise ship will be temporarily blocked. This is a smart setting. After more than a month, the signal will be restored, and the host will be able to call for help. There was a lot of food on the cruise ship, enough for the host to eat. Old He and the others will leave in a speedboat. A month later, they will confirm whether the cruise ship can be found. If not, they will leak the information to the police according to Mu Xiaoning's instructions. "Mihi, dear host, Mu Xiaoning has already arranged your escape route. It seems like he doesn't intend to come down from that island. Previously, I also found out that if his death is confirmed, all his assets will be disposed of. In addition, Mu Xiaoning has anonymously sponsored your living expenses and tuition fees, starting from next semester. Also, he has contacted a company for you based on your major. After you graduate, there will be a company that will conduct an on-campus recruitment for you. This guy can kill people with a conversation, but he's not careless at all when doing things. He's considered all aspects, which is quite touching. For the sake of his hard work, I won't be jealous of him for the time being." After listening to the system, Tanggua fell silent. She didn't expect Mu Xiaoning to do so many things in such a short time. Originally, Mu Xiaoning wanted to bring you to the island, but he later considered that it might traumatize you, so he gave up on the idea. He didn't admit it, but he was greatly moved by the host. This guy can't be handsome for more than 3 seconds. Chapter 5363. Madam Host, your classmates have all been moved to the island. Mu Xiaoning has also gone over. He just finished talking to Lao He. Lao He is preparing to bring people to the designated location. Tanggua did not leave the room. She stood by the window. 3 minutes later, the cruise ship started moving and headed in another direction. She planned to wait for Lao He and the others to leave before driving the cruise ship back to prevent the news from leaking. That would not be fun. The system kept staring at the island and kept reporting Mu Xiaoning's situation to her. In that empty town that has been set up, There's a room specially used by Mu Xiaoning. It's considered a secret room. He didn't lock up your classmates and went straight to the secret room. He's currently eating. Mu Xiaoning is now checking the surveillance cameras in the town. He has pointed out all the locations. His secret room is densely packed with small screens that cover almost every location in the town. The system exclaimed in surprise. Furthermore, these surveillance cameras are perfectly hidden. Coupled with the fact that the town is empty and dilapidated, it gives off a desolate and eerie feeling. Therefore, no one would have thought that there might be surveillance cameras everywhere in this town. Not only are there surveillance cameras, but every room in the town is hidden with killing intent. After watching the surveillance cameras, this guy went to check the room again. It seems like he's planning to practice in advance. 3 hours later, the cruise ship was docked beside another island. Lao He did not come in to check on Tangua's situation. This was because Tangua's room had been locked. No matter if it was from the outside or from the inside, they would have to use Tangua's fingerprints. This was a room that Mu Xiaoning had gotten someone to specially decorate when he realized that Tangua was different. Even if Lao He had professional ethics, he still did not trust Lao He. Everything had been prepared. Madam Host, Lao He and the others have left. Okay, we'll set off in an hour. We should be able to reach there before daybreak. When we left, I already threw down an array disc at the edge of the island. We can park the cruise ship there openly. There's no problem at all. No one will find out. Tangua did not ask the system to remove the signal jammer on the cruise ship. It was good that the signal was temporarily blocked. Actually, this cruise ship was not the one in her memory. Mu Xiaoning had intercepted the message when Du Li and the others contacted the cruise company. Speaking of which, the cruise company that Du Li and the others had contacted at the beginning was actually Mu Xiaoning's people. The cruise ship returned to the island very quickly. It only took a little more than 2 hours. Tangua docked the cruise ship next to the island. At this time, the island was surrounded by a formation. The people inside could not see the situation here. She didn't appear directly in the class, but chose to stay in a blind spot. From this position, he could see the students lying on the beach. He didn't know when these people would wake up. Dear host, what do you plan to do when the sun rises? Has he been hiding in the dark, or has he appeared with them? Of course I'm with them. If I hide in the dark, they will subconsciously suspect that I'm the one behind this. Tangua leaned against a stone slab and said faintly, if all of us are here, then they will believe that they have experienced something and not someone playing a game. The sun rose. Tangua heard footsteps and raised her head slightly. She saw a black figure walking toward the beach from afar. Chapter 5364. Mu Xiaoning walked towards the sleeping students and found an empty space to sit down. He was still wearing the black hat from yesterday, which covered most of his face. The sky gradually brightened, and the morning sun appeared on the sea. The red morning sun made him raise his head slightly to look at it, and it also dyed his face red. It had to be said that the scenery on the sea was very beautiful. It was almost impossible to see such a beautiful scene in the bustling city. Mu Xiaoning glanced at those who had not woken up yet. These people were not worthy of such a beautiful scenery. He thought of Tangua again. It was a pity that she did not see such a beautiful scene. That guy looks like he's thinking about life. Dear host, what do you think he's thinking when he looked at the beach, and then at his classmates? Is he trying to wake them up to enjoy the beautiful scenery? The system asked blankly. Do you think he'll be so kind as to ask these people to enjoy such a beautiful scenery? I don't think so. Then what does he mean? He's probably thinking that this place is so beautiful, and these people are not worthy. The system carefully recalled Mu Xiaoning's expression and suddenly understood. Now that the dear host said so, it seemed to be the case. The students in the class were woken up by the glaring sunlight. They shivered when they woke up because it was too cold. Everyone was stunned when they saw where they were. Where is this? Why did we wake up on the beach? Where's our cruise ship? Why can't we see our cruise ship? There were all kinds of doubts and worried voices in the crowd. They all looked at Du Li and the other main characters who were leading the game. When they saw Du Li sitting there in deep thought, as if she did not know what was going on, They were all dumbfounded. Bai Tian said, I remember that before we fainted, the cruise ship seemed to be shaking violently. It seemed like it was going to flip over. After that, I lost consciousness. It should be morning now. Wei Yin looked calm, but it could be seen from her eyes that she was still worried. I don't have my watch and phone with me. My body is dry. It can be deduced that we didn't fall into the water. Tao Jieji found Chen Kangol in the crowd and hugged his arm tightly. She asked in a low voice, Kangol, is this trouble caused by you changing your mind at the last minute? No, Chen Kangol said with certainty. I definitely didn't change the plan. If there were any changes on Du Li's side, there's no way he wouldn't tell us. I feel like something's not right. I don't know where this place is, and I don't have my phone with me. Seeing the uncertainty on Chen Kangol's face, Tao Jieji panicked. Could something have really happened? Can you find a way to contact the outside world? Tao Jieji asked again. Chen Kangol said, I'll ask if anyone else has a cell phone. Students, all of you have a cell phone on you. Maybe there was an accident. If you have a cell phone, take it out and contact the people outside. Things shouldn't have turned out this way. Now that everything was out of his control, Chen Kangol's first thought was to contact the outside and get out as soon as possible. Even though it was early in the morning and he was bathed in the warm sun, he still felt uneasy. He kept feeling that the surroundings were chilly and gave him a very uncomfortable feeling. Chapter 5365. Du Li, you didn't change the plan, right? Chen Kangol brought Tao Jieji to Du Li and asked softly. Du Li's expression was unsettled. No. Looks like something really happened. Chen Kangol's expression was ugly. Let's see who has a cell phone first. We need to get in touch with the outside world as soon as possible. As for playing games, they didn't even know where they were now. It was better not to think about it. After looking around, none of the 50 students in the class had a cell phone on them. Not to mention a cell phone, they didn't even have a watch. They only had themselves and the clothes they were wearing to protect themselves from the cold. All of their belongings were not with them. In front of them was an endless sea. Behind them was a forest. They didn't know what was in the forest. It was a sunny day, but it made them feel cold all over. Some people couldn't sit still anymore. They ran to Du Li and Chen Kangol to ask what was going on. Mu Xiaoning was still sitting in the corner. He didn't say a word, as if he didn't care about all this. No one felt that there was anything wrong with his behavior. Du Li and Chen Kangol finally calmed everyone down. Then, they did a head count and realized that Tang Guo was missing. They instinctively looked at Mu Xiaoning. Seeing him sitting quietly at the side, they quickly looked elsewhere. Where's Tang Guo? Why is she missing? Xiangwen, didn't you play well with Tang Guo? Tao Jieji asked. Xiangwen. We played well, but when everyone fainted, I fainted too. I don't know what happened after that. Xiangwen's expression was ugly. She could tell that this wasn't a joke. Something really happened. Everyone in their class, except for Tang Guo, appeared on an unfamiliar island. They didn't have time or communication tools. They couldn't even contact the outside world. Bai Tian suggested, why don't we look for her? She might be nearby. We don't know what's going on now. It's dangerous to be alone. We don't know if there are any wild beasts on this island. Bai Tian looked at Wei Yin and Tao Jieji, feeling regretful. If she had objected to this from the start and stopped them from playing games, this might not have happened. Let's look around then. Du Li's words were more authoritative. Following his words, the students formed groups of 2 or 3 and began to search the surroundings. Tang Guo did not intend to show up now, so she went into hiding. These people didn't really want to look for her, so they weren't very careful. Naturally, they didn't find where she was hiding. Mu Xiaoning also walked around casually. He didn't look for anyone at all. After all, according to his plan, Tang Guo was on the cruise ship at this time. Perhaps he had already woken up. She might panic when she realized that all her classmates were gone. But he had left a lot of food on the cruise ship. There was even a refrigerator on the cruise ship. It could last them for a few years, let alone a month. After a short period of panic, she would definitely calm down. After all, she was such a smart person. Perhaps a month on the island would be very long and boring, but it was better than staying on this island that was about to be stained with blood. He hoped that in the future, her life would be bright, and she would realize all her dreams and live happily. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.